Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Cadwell, Chapter 21. Are all the preparations complete? Yami asked Konkoro back at the metal shop that his two engineers ran. Things were running a little last minute, but he was certain that everything would come together nicely. The Bearfaunus nodded his head as he flipped a switch. The blonde looked at the contraption that he had Konkoro working on the last few weeks and smiled. It began to hover, a near silent hum emanating and echoing the empty area they occupied. Black and spherical, there was little to look at on the exterior until it began to rotate along the horizontal axis, the northern hemisphere moving clockwise, while the southern went counterclockwise, with the slight hiss of mechanical parts releasing air. The sphere, which was about twice the size of a mature and ripe watermelon, began to extend. As it did so, an audible buzzing could be heard in the nearby soundless expanse the warehouse was in. The habitat for insectoid viewing extremities is fully operational, as are the wandering apparatus of sharded perception. Hive and wasp, huh? Yami wondered as the hive fully opened, and hundreds, and definitely more than 1,000 small wasp-like and robotic things began to buzz around. And these things can do everything you said, right? How much time did it take to reverse engineer that Atlas tech anyways? Of course they can do everything I said, Yami. I'm not that lazy deer that my sister is so infatuated with, you know. All of them can record up to 24 hours of surveillance without even needing to be uploaded it into the main storage server where it would be located. There are intelligent enough to evade assault and capture, come with self-destructive sequences powerful enough to simulate a small fragmented grenade, have cameras that record in the highest quality you can possibly get, and a visual range of over 200 meters. Everything they get is transmitted right to the hive and a few terminals in Mount Glen that I've already set up so long as they're within 25 kilometers, and I'll get that increased as soon as you get me the right equipment, and I can head out to our vassal villages to get the infrastructure ready. These wasps of mine will enable us to see anything and everything that happens. True, they aren't nearly as reliable as Haku, but he can only be in one place at a time. Well, you'll get your test run right here and right now. Send them out. Keep an eye on the northeast and west walls with them. I'll have a few others down at Central Hall to help you, including Shikamaru and Sasori. I need you to, if anything happens that requires repair, he'll coordinate everything, and there will be some others there to monitor the different vantage points. If this turns out as well as you think they will, you'll have the funding you need to increase the scale and effectiveness of your hive. Kankuro nodded and headed out the warehouse doors of the city hall. Haku, I need Sasori, Shikamaru, Yukimaru, Rin, Hana, Karin, and Yutakata at city hall. Let them know Kankuro will explain what needs to happen and that Shikamaru will be in charge of orchestrating the operation. Haku appeared at the reflection and a polished steel wall of the warehouse nearest Yami. Of course, Lord Yami, where should I be during the assault? He wondered. Yami thought for a moment before giving his answer. I'd like you to give Sabuza, Kisame, Sugetsu support on the east wall. The four of you are used to working as a squad by this point. I want you to use everything you've learned during the training with them to the best of your ability in these coming battles. Haku nodded his head and walked back into the wall, disappearing again. Where will we be? Neil wondered as she looked at Yami. Kimimaru had since been ordered to the west wall, while Zabuza was, as Yami stated before, on the east wall. Yami's eyes faded as blue shone once again. Neil couldn't help but smile as they did. She loved those deep blue eyes of his. They were like the ocean, vast and infinite, ever present, and something that could easily envelop you if you weren't careful. They watched his aura so beautifully. We're going to be on the eastern front for now. If anything needs assisting, though, we must be ready to go and aid them. If I have the most power and I'm the leader, I have a responsibility to help whosoever requires it the most. Neil nodded in understanding and followed after her lover, genuinely caressing her parasol. Anything you need, my love, I will ensure it is done. Anything you desire, you shall have it. Any obstacle shall be obliterated. You should have just let us be, cowardly king. You should have given my love the crown, the throne, and all your land. Now you will perish in the most painful and embarrassing way possible. He will have everything starting with this city. I won't rest until he gets the entire world, though. Neil's grin seemed absolutely mad as the thought circled through her head, but Nata didn't pay it any mind since he was used to that expression on her face. He was even beginning to think it was cute. In its own way, Neil was pushed from her thoughts when the blonde took her hand in his own, which immediately calmed her. Her smile, or he smiled to her before speaking. Soon, Neil. Soon we'll have our home, and then no one will bother us. Maybe I can even invite Blake over here and introduce you two properly. I think if I could get Blake and Adam here, and then I can have the three most important people in my life all get along, then I could be truly happy. We just need to make sure we have somewhere safe they can visit. Mount Glen, Southern Wall. As Naruto and Neo arrived at the southern wall, the blonde noted Jirobu was watching the ground below. Where are the others? He wondered. The larger teen looked back and bowed his head to Naruto before he responded. It is unlikely for another attack to come so quickly, so I am keeping watch while Roman and Mercury are in the tower. Baki has some of his men along the walls as well, but it is just us three over here. Based on the disapproval look in Naruto's blue eyes, Jirobo connected a few dots. Is there another assault coming? He wondered. Haku confirmed that the king is planning to launch a 4-point charge on our walls, as he thinks we only have 3 individuals with semblances under our employee. The north, east, south, and west walls will be attacked soon, though we don't have an exact time frame. The boy sighed. I had heard the king was quite cowardly, but I think he also might be an idiot. For now, we must remain vigilant. Of course, Lord Naruto, Jirobu acknowledged. Do you have any orders? As Naruto was prepared to answer, the artillery on the wall caught his eye. Rethinking his response, Kurama came out with a devilish grin. Man the artillery, Jirobu. Red receded as purple shone through. On my signal, you're going to shell the camps. I simply need some time to clear out Hidan's group and contact the other guardians. If they won't lead the assault, we'll kill them all before they can. Looking at the heavy artillery in his possession, Jirobu nodded. I shall try those two out and have them keep lookout then, he mentioned as he headed into the tower. Naruto took control again and began walking along the wall. Let's go, Neil. There's more to be done before the king rushes our defenses. The parasol-wielding queen of Mount Glen nodded and followed after him. He was showing such authority that she wouldn't have missed whatever he was planning for the world. Naruto's northern Vale camp, King Alexander's tent. The king of all of Vale couldn't help but smile as his nervousness had slowly waned since giving his orders to Sir Argent. Things would start going better. He could just feel it. There was some minor setback if his vassals would only listen to him, and then things would go well and he'd subjugate these unruly faunus. That was about the time that Remnant began shaking. Almost immediately upon the first rocking and concussions, Alexander found himself yelping and hiding under the table he had previously been sitting at. At first, it was only one tremor, but then the next came, second later, then the next, again. It kept until the shaking was nearly constant. My liege, we must leave. The voice of Sir Argent cut through Alexander's fear as he appeared and helped him from underneath the table. The rebels are bombarding us with some sort of artillery. For now, it aims at the eastern camp, the one Beryl was stationed at and preparing for her charge. I fear that she is likely dead, seeing as we can feel the quaking from here. Again, we must leave. Those raiders who have been harassing us must have been scouting the territory for Uzumaki, so they could do this. Alexander nodded fearfully as he was led out of the tent. Getting on his steed, Arjun doing the same, they quickly made their way from the camp. If only the terrain wasn't so terrible that they had to use horses, he'd feel a lot safer in one of the other vehicles. The other nobles with him and the foot soldiers were also scattering. We will need to regroup farther away, Arjun exclaimed. For now, the further we are, the less likely we are to suffer high casualties from their assault. I hope the other camps are doing the same. He didn't say anything, but King Alexander was fine running away from the explosions. As the duo rode further into the forest, he couldn't help but notice how much cooler it was getting as they continued. Was that snow in the trees? Hold, my liege, Arjun commented as he pulled his horse to a halt. Alexander doing the same. Show yourself. The king and the noble looked around the canopy and the floor for any signs of movement, but were surprised as the lake they had stopped adjacent to froze over, and a figure emerged from its surface, cloaked in teal clothing that looked to be from the Mystralian Orient, and masked. The figure regarded them. Lord Uzumaki instructed me to guard the wall, but after hearing his plan, I knew this was an opportunity we could not miss. After all, if you remove the head, a snake simply writhers around aimlessly. A figure spoke coldly, clinically, as it threatened the sovereign ruler of Vale. You are one of those predators, then? Arjun noted as he unmounted and pulled his sword from its place on his belt. I shall not allow any man, woman, or child to harm any descendant of our glorious king, Augustus. The figure looked upon Argent as a light light blue aura enveloped its hand before needles that appeared to be made of ice appeared in between the fingers of its clenched fists. I did not wish to kill more than necessary, but if you would throw your life away for this coward, then it cannot be helped. Arjun, despite his armor, managed to evade the needles that came his way and rushed the figure. Away, away with you, my liege. I shall hold him off. You must go, though. If you are lost, Vale is lost. Only giving Argent a look for a moment, the king prodded his mount to gallop away, even as Argent and the figure were locked in combat. For every swing and thrust he sent, the figure evaded it neatly. The figure stopped defending, however, and placed Argent on the defensive quickly. Argent thus consumed its form and seeped into the frozen lake as large spikes of ice attempted to pierce through his armor. Argent's kite shield would not even stop those, and so all he could do was keep himself balanced on the ice with aura and evade the spell work as best he could. Searching for any opening, he braced himself and jumped backwards, barely evading a spike that could have ended him had he been any slower. Shield thrown away, he held his sword in both hands. The figure had not strayed from its original position, and Arjun would make it pay for that mistake. Just as Arjun was about to attack him, a large and rectangular construct of ice appeared in between them, blocking his attack. The figure then appeared within the object before said object began to clone itself in a circle around Arjun. Some of those then copied themselves and formed a layer of floating mirrors above them. One last mirror appeared horizontally above them, creating a dome around the knight. This is my ultimate technique, my unblockable attack. I'm sure by this time Hidan has gotten a hold of the king. Your sacrifice was for nothing, Sir Knight. The figure explained as it was visible in all of the mirrors. Arjun looked around, trying to discern whether the figure really had copied itself or if the entire thing was an illusion. I am not finished yet, you spectre, he declared even as he molded his own aura. I will not allow disrespectful rebels and terrorists to take what King Argustus worked so hard to achieve. Arjun flowed with his own silver aura as he spoke. His armor began to glow along with its bright, so with it brightly, so brightly it was blinding. When the glow died down, Arjun seemed to match his name as his skin was now a silvery color and his armor was gone. With a grin, he slammed his now silver fist into the nearest mirror and the figure seemed shocked when it shattered. It kept the dome up, but it disappeared from the reflections. Arjun left the dome and noted that the figure was standing atop the horizontal mirror and looked down at him. Once again, it tried creating the spikes of ice from the ground, but Arjun stood still this time. When the spike tried to pierce him, it didn't even leave a scrape on his new gleaming form. Arjun looked at the figure, a neutral expression in place before ripping the spike out of the ground and throwing it at the figure. Before it could hit, the masked entity disappeared into the mirror and the mirrors themselves disappeared. Arjun reverted back to his normal form, got back on his horse and began to search for his liege. With King Alexander. While Alexander was keeping the masked figure busy, the king did his best to get as far away from the battle as he possibly could. He was so focused on what was in front of him on eye level, however, that he didn't notice the tripwire right in the horse's path. With a loud cry of pain, it fell and crushed one of his legs beneath its large frame. His own cry of pain quickly followed by as the bone snapped. With some trouble, he pulled himself out from underneath the steed, noting that its own leg was bleeding profusely from the thin wire it had cut itself on at high speed. Oh, what do we have here? Keaton wondered as he found the source of the screams he'd heard. You wouldn't happen to be the one who challenged Lord Uzumaki's divine right, would you? Alexander looked at the giant of a man who wore black robes, slicked back silver hair, and wielded a large tri-bladed scythe as if he was death itself. It's been some time since I've had the chance to sacrifice such nobility, and never have I been able to do so to Lord Uzumaki. Stay away from me, Alexander pleaded as he tried to crawl away. Hidan moved even closer, scythe in hand. Stepping on the king's back, he slid his weapon in place, with the king's neck between the first and second blade in his weapon. In the name of the Almighty, for he who takes pain and gives life, blessed be thy name. Send unto us all of your goodwill. Give unto us all that you are willing, and take from us that which we cannot bear. Though allow us the privilege of journaling with what burdens we take. Hallowed is your name, Lord Uzumaki, God of all life. Hallowed is your name, Lord Uzumaki. Hallowed is your rule, Lord Uzumaki. In your name, by your rule, under your rule, I offer this infidel to you. And may his blood please you and empower you. Amen. And at the words, Hidan ripped his weapon back, permanently severing the head of the last king of Vale. Grinning madly, Hidan held his scythe like a clergy scepter, with his arms spread wide. Flee, non-believers, heathens, heretics, your king is no more and shall be more. Only Lord Uzumaki is fit to rule, and only he shall lament your salvation. Be thankful in your rule. The world that which was broken shall be made whole again, for he is the exalted, the chosen, and the most holy. That was when Arjun arrived just in time to see his liege decapitated, and the lunatic spouting some religious nonsense about the pretender king. His calm demeanor disappeared as the king's rolling head stopped when it touched his boot. Looking down at it, he could still see the look of absolute terror in those fading eyes, even when they blinked at him. My liege, Arjun began seeing red as he laid his eyes on Hidan, his semblance activating instantly as he was covered in that armor once again. Rushing forward with a guttural and bloodthirsty scream, he caught Hidan off guard and slammed his fist into the man, launching him through several trees as they snapped in half from the force. Finally, the man only dented the last tree he hit. Arjun felt himself calm a little as he saw what he thought to be Hidan's mangled corpse. That was, of course, until the bones that protruded from his body began to realign themselves and force themselves back into Hidan's body. Bruises disappeared into the blink of an eye as Hidan stood, a mad look in his eyes. That fucking hurt. I think I'm going to enjoy putting down another heathen, Hidan remarked as he held out a hand, which began glowing purple with gravity dust, and pulled his scythe back to his hand. What are you? Arjun had to ask as Hidan rolled his neck, a neck which had been broken just a moment ago. Hidan grinned at the question. I'm Hidan, the high priest of the Temple of the Healer. I interpret the words of the Lord of Life, write them down, and teach sermons to our members. I am the direct link between the great and merciful Lord Uzumaki and the common people. He showed me the light and led me away from my heretic beliefs to find the one true faith. It is also the job of the high priest to hunt down the heretics and heathens and convert them by the word or by the blade. I think the latter will be sufficient for you. Arjun braced himself as the Zealot rushed forward. When he didn't attack with the blade, but with the end of the hand, it certainly didn't surprise the knight. Seeing it didn't do anything, Hidan's eyes seemed to grow wilder. I had thought it was something like that. I fought someone before with the ability to harden their skin a few decades ago, but I know how to beat you. Leaning his scythe against a tree, his entire robe glowed with that purple from the gravity dust. I'll just have to literally beat you. Arjun grimaced, knowing how dangerous gravity does in close proximity. Glancing at his liege, he couldn't back down though. Someone this insane couldn't be allowed to live. Pay attention, heathen! Arjun was brought back to the present as Hidan had taken the moment of distraction he had to close the gap. Powered by the force of gravity, Hidan's punch launched Arjun through 3 trees before he hit the ground, rolled a bit, and then stopped with a groan. That stuff is tougher than I thought. It doesn't really matter though. I'll tear you apart no matter how long it takes. I've got a literal eternity. Arjun had barely regained his feet when Hidan was up upon him again. He tried blocking the next blow, but Hidan merely kicked him through more trees when he connected. This time, he didn't even recover before Hidan stomped onto his back, channeling enough gravity dust to begin denting his metallic flesh. Arjun couldn't even attack as he was first coughing and then vomiting blood. After that, he began choking on his own saliva and blood. Hidan removed his foot, grinning as the knight had to let go of his semblance and was currently bleeding internally, but still alive. You're not allowed to die yet. That ability of yours will be useful, so I'm going to take you to Lord Uzumaki. Haku, get the king's corpse. The masked figure from before jumped from the branches of one of the trees and suddenly did as instructed. With a grin, Hidan picked up Arjun, armor and all, and set him over one shoulder as he walked back to Mount Glen, picking up his scythe on the way. Without the king, or even if Hidan didn't know it, his second in command, Vale's forces would be in chaos, and soon too would be the government. This was just the beginning of the end for the once proud strongest of the 4 kingdoms. End of chapter 21. Shattered Pieces by Orpheus Kidwell, Chapter 22. Only one word could describe what went through the Lord of Mount Glen's head when his loyal spy master appeared through one of his signature ice mirrors, tossing a headless corpse to the floor while it carried a vaguely head-shaped object wrapped in what appeared to be the King of Vale's natural flag. Hidan, Lord Naruto, The soldiers are in retreat after our first bombardment. The peasantry seem to be unaccustomed to such high-grade tactics, and the nobility refuse to put themselves in that much risk. I know I was ordered to the eastern wall, but Hidan and myself thought it would be a waste opportunity to not take advantage of the situation. While I kept Sir Argent, King Alexander's regent, busy, he came upon the king himself and executed him. Shortly after, Hidan beat Argent to such a state that he cannot move and will likely die within the hour regardless of healing. He is currently approaching the city on foot to deliver him to you so that you might find some use in his semblance, which defended against all of my attacks. For the record, Neil, Cinder, and Gurren were speechless through the entire exchange. Naruto himself had given control over to Yami, who motioned to Haku, who wanted to verify the identity of whoever head he carried. Haku removed just enough of the flag to show the terrified visage of one King Alexander, the sixth bastard of the Kingdom of Vale. Nodding to himself, Yami allowed Haku to replace the cloth where it was previously. It's still not over. I'm sorry, Gurren wondered. We have the corpse of their leader, and Hidan is delivering the second in command. Without them, the nobles will begin in fighting, not just here, but all over the kingdom. With all due respect, Lord Yami, how is this not over? Yami turned to look down upon the open fields outside the walls that suddenly gave way to Valiant forestry. There is no treaty, and they still have no idea what we've done. We need the nobles to see exactly what Hidan did and ensure they know that they can't possibly gain anything from continuing here. He then looked over to his spymaster, Kartak Sasri. Tell him I need a message sent to the scrolls of every person outside the walls within our domain. I want these soldiers to know what we've done. Yami took the king's head from the boy, and with that, he was off through another mirror to find the redhead. Purple Eyes looked at the package he held as he went over several possible solutions to the predicament he found himself in. What will you do, little prince? Cinder wondered with a curious grin in her amber eye. Things are certainly getting interesting. The chaos and veil that was literally to come from this was just icing on the cake. King, Neo emphasized as she glared at the fall maiden. Cinder only let a small smirk twitch across her lips. Of course, King. Now that Alexander is dead, there is room after all. Yami waved off the woman's words. Mount Glen is our home. We don't need Olivel. Let the nobles fight amongst themselves and weaken their forces. Someone else will take the mantle. Neil looked at Yami as he spoke, disappointment clear in her dichromatic eyes. She didn't say anything though. Mount Glen Command Center, can I get a status update on Camp Alpha? Shikamaru asked as he listened to the radio chatter in his headset. After the person responded for that particular camera feed replied, he relayed it quickly. North Wall Camp Alpha has scattered, switched bombardment to secondary targets. Scanning his own video feeds, he watched as the southwesternmost camp was hit with the first shell. These wasps were damn useful, that's for sure. He'd been able to keep track of basically the entire siege without needing to leave his post and move the pieces around as if this was actually a game of shogi. His concentration was interrupted, however, as he felt the familiar formation of aura. Taking the headset off, he turned and saw Haku materializing from a mirror. Something from Lord Uzumaki Haku, he wondered. The spymaster nodded and searching the room quickly. Sasori, your services are required. Lord Uzumaki wants a wide-range communication sent out to every scroll in the area. He wants to send a message to our enemies. The redhead seemed surprised but nodded. How long would it take to set up? Generally, it might take longer, but I think I can have it up within a half hour if we send the signal to the hive and have it relayed via the wasp to all devices that can receive the signal. I'll get started on it right away and let you know when it's ready. We can either have a live stream or use recording. It's up to Lord Uzumaki. Haku nodded, stepped back into his mirror. I shall let him know then. The wasp can really do something like that, Sasori? Shikamaru wondered. When he received a nod, he motioned for the man to give some sort of explanation. He was genuinely curious. It's a relatively simple method. Scrolls manufactured legally and according to regulations are required to receive any signal on certain frequencies, regardless of whether they are harmful or not. By using one of those frequencies transmitted via the wasps, they'll force the scrolls to play the video. By using the hive as a hub, we only need to send it to a single device. Assuming we can get the wasp in position to have the most amount of range, we can easily ensure everyone within a kilometer receives the transmission. Speaking of which, Kakuro, I need you to get half of the wasps in position and leave the rest under surveillance. Yeah, I'm already working on it, don't worry. Shikamaru took in the formation and spoke into his headset. All teams, temporary halt on bombardment. If anyone gets too close to the walls, you are free to use dust, semblance, and anti-personnel weaponry. Otherwise, halt your fire and remain vigilant. A hit to morale is best done as the enemy thinks that they've survived the worst. After all, Shikamaru didn't know what message Lord Uzumaki would be relaying, given they obviously had the upper hand. However, it was most likely to be something major, something that could force a surrender. Eastern Wall. Why? Haven't you killed me yet? Arjun groaned out with some trouble. He was being carried over Hidan's shoulder as if he weighed nothing, his blood definitely having soaked the man's robe. Well, what was left of it after their fight anyways? The silver-haired priest simply grinned. Your usefulness is in dying. Your usefulness is in dying close enough to Lord Uzumaki so that he can get access to your semblance, not in the middle of nowhere. You are a good competent. You even managed to get past Haku. I'm sure that most memories of yours will serve us well in figuring out how best to approach the other nobles. Not to mention that little trick of yours would really enhance Lord Uzumaki's defensive capabilities. That's why you're still alive. Arjun didn't have the energy to argue, let alone fight back. Still, it was curious Hidan just stood outside the wall and wasn't heading for the gate. When the wall itself opened in front of him, there were no words for his thoughts. Is this the man that defeated Haku Hidan? Arjun looked upon the boy before him, blonde hair, blue eyes, tan skin, and wearing sterling clothing. Who was he? That's right, Lord Uzumaki, Hidan asserted and dropped Arjun to the floor, eliciting a sharp scream from him as his broken bones reacted to the hard ground. I wasn't sure what the range on burden was, so I brought him back. He has this semblance that turns his flesh metallic. I think it took quite a bit of my strength to break his concentration in long enough for it to drop. I think it would be really useful. Also, this guy has to be pretty high-ranking considering he was specifically protecting the king. Before Naruto could say anything, Arjun pieced together what strength he had left and spoke. You're the pretender. You're just a child. Naruto knelt in front of the man, looking into his eyes. Why would you do something so despicable? The Bastards are responsible for the world being as peaceful as it is. Peaceful, Naruto wondered. Well, I didn't intend on killing the king. Even I can bring people back from the dead. That man was a coward and a weakling. Not only that, but he was incompetent and allowed the nobles to push him into this siege. It's a wonder he lived this long, actually. The blonde gazed at the knight. You don't interest me, though. Someone skilled enough to have Haku concede is quite powerful indeed. Why would you be loyal to someone so terrible? Here, I'll fix you up. But Hidan will really kill you this time if you try anything. Arjun didn't really get what the boy was going on about. Then Uzumaki laid a hand on his back. He felt aura being poured into him and watched as the boy before him seemed to take on all of his injuries. His cuts closed up as the pretender's flesh opened, his bones mended as the boy before him had his own visibly break his skin. As Arjun felt his organs return to a healthy state, he knew that the teen in front of him now had those exact same punctures, gashes, and hemorrhages that he had sustained. Then, before Arjun's eyes, all of those elements healed, the bones popped back into place, the cuts closed up. He stood there perfectly healthy as if he was never harmed. Slowly, Arjun stood, regarding the boy. What did you do? The blonde held his hand, and Arjun noted that the silver-haired man was about to say something but held back. What I did isn't important. As you can see, you are no longer at risk of death for now. I could easily have let you die and simply taken your soul for myself. Like I said, though, you intrigue me. Well, I suppose it's better to say you intrigue us. That isn't really important now. I suppose I should introduce myself, however. I am Naruto Uzumaki, Lord Pretender of Mount Glen and leader of the clan. I am Sir Argent of House Warwick, he replied. Though noble, I have little claim to the Duchy of Ardeen, which my family has ruled over and protected even before the Great War. My sword belongs to the Bastes. Though I suppose with his master's death it no longer does. I have felt the memory of King Augustus. Arjun looked to the ground. I think I'm starting to get a better picture now. Yami had taken over at this point. You aren't loyal to the coward, but to his line, or maybe to the throne. I've heard of some nobles making pledges like that. You certainly are a strange one, Sir Argent. Naruto took control once more, but had a thoughtful expression. Hidan, what do you think? His memories and some of this might be useful, but I think that he could be as well. The acolyte understood what his master was getting at very quickly. I think I know what you mean. If someone so high up were now on our side, it would serve us even better, right? Arjun perked up at hearing that, a fire entering his previous dead eyes. I would not attack my home, nor abandon the Hero King's virtues. Arjun protested as he stood, towering over Naruto. Despite that, the blonde gave him a look. Arjun could have sworn that his eyes were blue, but this purple gaze made him unsure who really was the larger man at the time. We have no wishes to fight Bell, Yami stated plainly. In fact, if that imbecile would have just approached us diplomatically, perhaps negotiations could have taken place, a treaty been formed. Instead, he attacked and we defended. If we could ensure that the forces of Vil stand down and lay not another hand in our direction, that would be for the best. We have our own interests and our own villages to protect, villages that the king was supposed to ensure were defended. Only because he was so despicable could we have gained their loyalty as vassals. If anyone has broken the virtues of the King Augustus, it was Alexander. Arjun seemed like he was going to say something, but only looked to the side. It was certainly the truth. Nobility was tasked with protecting the peasantry, and ever since King Marcus had died, that happened less and less. The nobles of Vela are power hungry, and have been growing lazier, he finally noted. The memories of the Great War faded quickly, and with no conflicts there was little to occupy their time. The Grim are taken care of by the huntsmen, but they can only do so much. But because that is their specialty, doesn't mean that the nobility shouldn't halt in their ancient duty. Many have forgotten that. On top of that, King Alexander was easily pushed around and easily distracted. He was not greedy, but the whispers of the nobles are what convinced him to attack. The dust robberies have made the people of Vale afraid, discontent. We rely far too much on Atlas, and the largest supplies of dust in our kingdom are heavily guarded by grim nests. However, Mount Glen had been eradicated of Grim for the most part. That enticed the nobles and the burghers. The truth be told, King Alexander was willing to overlook your declaration of independence due to not wanting to fight someone capable of doing what his nobles and what Ospin could not or would not. They pushed. He tried to pull that, but it was too much. My sword belonged to the successor of King Augustus, but he who carries the mantle of our great hero king. Therefore, I followed where King Alexander went. He was not prepared for what came, for how competent you all were. None of us were. Each noble had his own glory in mind, and there was no central structure. His Majesty was leader in name only. The moment we left the capital, it's just as suspected then, Yami noted. The infighting was already going on well before today. Alexander's death will surely cause a succession crisis, but the nobles likely will think of this as the most optional outcome, an opportunity to take the throne. We have no wishes to take the crown of Bel, and we will remain outside of the conflict sure to come, so long as it does not come to us. I can't really say the same of the other kingdoms, though. Then there's the White Fang. On top of that, Bel is going to burn, I'd say. Arjun clenched his fist tightly, but he couldn't argue with the cold analysis. All that leaves is you, Sir Argent. Naruto was in control once more. Where do you go in all of this? Someone like you, I'd say you certainly be talented enough to make us of use. My family is the most important thing to me. Even if we were enemies this morning, I'll accept you if you can help protect them, or I can relieve you of your life right here and now and use your strength as my own to help them. Sir Argent, there's a war on the horizon, not this petty conflict, not the upcoming civil war in Bel that is all but destined to come of this, but another great war. I can assure you that it will be. Just as surely as the sun will rise in the morning, I'd like you to stand with me when it comes. Whether you're alive or dead doesn't actually change the outcome of that. Are you some sort of necromancer? Arjun wondered, to which the boy smiled and shook his head. No, I'm a healer and a protector, by semblance. It is of devouring, though. Just as I devour your injuries, I devour the abilities of those who die around me. I don't want to destroy, though. I want to build. I wish to build something that will outlive me. Somewhere safe for my family. If I can ensure that they are never hurt, that they would always be happy, then I will. However, anyone that tries to take that from them, I will gladly erase. I may be a child myself, but the clan is my family. I was born with this power, and so I need to use it to protect them. Arjun saw something in those blue eyes, something he knew quite well. There is an ancient code of honor amongst my family, Lord Uzumaki. Nobilis obligus is the obligation of those born with much to provide for those with little, to ensure they live peacefully, healthily, and happily. The peasants are our children to look after. Many of those in Vale have forgotten this code, but I can see that it is very much alive in you. I will lend you my sword if you can promise me to ensure the crown of Vale passes to someone whom holds the spirit of the hero king. Finding someone like that could take some time and effort. Still, it would probably be best for the clan if the new king of Vale was someone I could trust not to try and attack me. Okay, I'll promise you that, Sir Argent. However, if you attack any of my people, my family, I will make you wish for death. You understand that, correct? The man nodded. Then I will accept. I look forward to seeing what kind of man you are, my liege. End of chapter 22.